We are John and Ellie, the Barefoot Doctors. Join us on this new chapter on our brand new Leopard 45 catamaran as we unearth the jewels of the Med. And the world. Because life is better barefoot.
So we are sailing our Leopard 45 down the west coast of Italy and are now at Ponza, a really amazing island which I've been to 35 years ago. We drop anchor in Frontone Bay, surrounded by vertical white cliffs and crystal clear water. This is a really convenient spot because Ponza port is always fully booked. There is no space to anchor and there is easy access from this bay around to the town by dinghy.
Well, I managed to twist John's arm to stay longer in Ponza, so thanks to all of you that backed me up. There is so much to see and experience and do here in Ponza. The steep white cliffs that seem to have just risen from the ocean are spectacular. I love the turquoise rock pools and the many caves for us to explore. There's so many, how could you possibly do it all in a few days? And safe. I love being able to plop over the back of the boat in the cool, crystal clear water with no sharks. Only a few jellies that you have to watch out for. Otherwise, it's just...
Where are we? We're in Ponza, Italian island, just south of Rome actually. So this is a great tourist destination because it's about 25 miles offshore and it's actually quite a spectacular island. Really quite amazing rock formations and all that.
It's beautiful.
So.
Oh, and did I mention the cool vibes to chill out in the local beach clubs while we soak up some rays?
It's very uniform layout of all the lounges and the umbrellas on the beach. It's very, very military.
Everyone's got their own lounge, their own umbrella, and their own
Little bit of space.
And
they love it.
That's the way they like it.
Even on the way to town, we are met by some phenomenal cliffs and rock architecture.
The pastel-coloured block buildings and homes are just seemingly perched right up there on the edge of the cliffs. How delightful.
Barefoot! Look at that!
Ponza. Beautiful Ponza.
It is really interesting to come back 35 years later and see the things that have changed so dramatically and those things that have stayed the same. Back in those days there was no bureaucracy and we were moored 3 boats deep. This always led to anchors being fouled on other people's lines, and there was a guy with a glass bottom bucket and rowboat that was charging about €50 to untangle people's chains. Now you're not even allowed to go in there, and there's a huge amount of bureaucracy of where you can park your boat, where you can park your dinghy, and the place is just phenomenally overcrowded. That's of course the price you pay for having such a fantastic destination.
And of course the villages are so cute, and it's a mix of cafes, restaurants, and chic little boutiques selling beautiful clothes and a lot of handmade jewellery. The village comes to life in the evening where everyone comes back from the beach and they are showered and clean and ready for the night's entertainment. It's pretty crowded, but it really just makes up a nice buzzy vibe on the island. We have found our favourite spot for the evening sundowners and nibbles of olives, chips and nuts, served complimentary with our wine.
We've just had a nice wine. It's a very balmy afternoon here in Italy. Temperature is like 35 plus. And we've just had a nice cool white wine with some nibblies. Now we've got to get ourselves back to the dinghy and back to Expedition Barefoot.
And we love people watching. People watching us, watching them. And then there's other people watching us and them. My hero. He's going out to get the dinghy and
chivalrous. I think I've had too much wine. It's been very chivalrous. But this is Ponza. It's absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Here comes John with the car.
We head back to Expedition Barefoot and take in the awesome lights reflecting on the flat, calm water.
Not on. It's all fun and games here at the Anchorage. We've got boats coming in and other boats are saying, no, you can't anchor there, and getting their temper up.
And just when you think there's no more room in the anchorage, another boat comes in.
No, 3 boats coming. 1, 2, 3.
It's crazy. And then another one comes in.
On the way.
He's coming in.
Okay guys, so you can see from these anchorages that many of them are extremely crowded, and the question is, when you're dropping anchor and when boats are coming up to anchor beside you, how close is too close? What do you think, honey?
Well, there are so many boats out there in Italy, and there's not that many anchorages, so everyone's jam-packed, I guess. So
Yeah, and really in our experience, the worst offenders for coming up close and dropping without any particular forethought are motorboat owners that seem to work their boats pretty much like they're driving a car, and inexperienced sailing charterers. So the first thing we should talk about is etiquette. What should one do? If you're coming into an anchorage, the person that's dropping the anchor basically has to keep clear of everybody else. And if their anchor drags, if they swing in and are going to bump into the boat next door to them, that's the person that should have to leave first, not the person that was there before. Always drop your anchor so you have enough swinging room and you're clear of everybody else. If necessary, you should ask the boat next to you how much change you have out. If they have 50 meters and you have 30 meters, they're going to be in a much bigger swinging circle than you, and that means as the wind comes round, they may well clip into you, or vice versa. So if everybody's got similar amounts of chain out, you'll all swing with similar swinging circles.
the other thing that people don't tend to take into consideration too is currents. So while you can have wind going in one direction, you can also have no wind, and then the currents will blow the boats in different ways. So, you know, you think, okay, we're all going to swing together. That may not be the case.
That was actually a particular problem in the Bahamas, because boats of different shapes, like catamarans, will drift with the current significantly differently from a monohull. Sometimes we'll be being pushed by the current, whereas the monohull is being pushed by the wind, so that causes quite significant changes in position. I will do a whole section in a later episode about how to drop your anchor and the techniques to use to keep clear of everybody else. Right now I want to talk about etiquette in anchorages. So if somebody's coming up too close to you, honey, what do?
The best signal is hands on hips. I think that's pretty universal, because I think that's the pose everyone tends to strike when you go out and you're looking at all the boats coming in. Everyone tends to do hands on hips if they're displeased.
So if somebody's coming up, you do the hands on hips pose and look. And if they are starting to drop their anchor and you know that it's not going to be safe, then you really need to call out to them and go, oi, oi, do hand signals or speak to them.
And 9 times out of 10, people will go, yep, you know, okay, and they'll back off.
And the other thing to remember is if there's any boats on moorings, they're not going to swing at all. Usually the moorings are on a very short line, and that boat will stay exactly in that position. And if you anchor on a chain, you've got to make sure your whole swinging circle is clear of that mooring. And then the other really tricky situation is when the wind gets up and everybody starts to get worried about dragging. What do? Obviously, if you're dragging, you have to be responsible for your boat and making sure you don't hit other people's boats. But of course, there are sometimes people who are not on their boats, which is a problem if the wind gets up, and then you might have to move your boat because it's dragging into you, and that's always a real worry, because when you have a boat dragging onto you, you can't pull your anchor up because you have to go forward to lift your anchor. So that makes yachties very nervous when a boat's dragging down onto you and the person in that boat is not paying attention.
That's happened to us more times than I'd like to remember.
The opposite thing happened to us when a guy came into the anchorage, dropped their anchor behind us, but we thought they were too close. We didn't kick and scream at the time, but then the wind changed by 90 degrees, and while they looked quite reasonable distance from us at the start, they ended up 10 meters behind us, and we went through a whole storm overnight with this boat 10 meters behind us, and that is absolutely awful because if we drag the smallest amount, we were going to hit that boat, and that would have been our fault. Fortunately, our anchor held, but it was a very nervous night. We had to be on anchor watch, and when the wind was blowing strong, I actually had the engines on as well, just ready, because 10 meters just goes like that if your anchor starts to drag.
Yeah, there's not much time at all.
And that guy wasn't on his boat either. Generally speaking, you would not jump onto other people's boats except to save their boat. And here you see a catamaran on the far side of this white one that has hit them and is scraping down the far side of that boat. The furler and the mast are aligned, so the boat is bow to us and sideways to the wind, which is quite typical when you're dragging your anchor. As the boat gets to face into the wind, he then drives forward to get out of the way and re-anchor. And I would also suggest that anytime you're in a squall, take down all your sunshades and anything that will catch the wind. How close is too close? In Italy, it's a hell of a lot closer than it ever was in my experience in the past. Just there's so many boats, and you have to kind of live with that to a certain extent.
My advice to you is practice striking the pose, hands on hips. Well, how close is too close? If you can see the whites of their eyes.
Okay, all the best, guys. Hope that was useful.
Bye from us.
Okay, guys, let's take you for a sail around the whole of Ponza Island. As we pass the port, we are faced with caves that were made by the Romans, where they used to cultivate and grow eels, which apparently in those days was a delicacy. These caves can only be entered if you go on a guided tour, so we just admired them from the outside and drove by. The houses sit perched precariously at the top of white cliffs, and rugged rocks protrude dangerously at every point. Here is the southern tip of Ponza with its lighthouse and more rugged rocks. We pass pristine, clean white cliffs that are amazing. Then enter the Chiaia di Luna because it looks like the moon. These phenomenal high vertical cliffs dwarf the yachts anchored below. The crystal clear waters and beaches beckon us, so we take the dinghy in to explore more. More caves, more tunnels, and even blowholes cross our path.
Yeah, look at the size of that guy, and look at the size of the cliff.
Yeah, that gives you some perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The little people at the bottom.
Wow, this is cool.
Not going to go through there though.
Yeah, look a bit.
We're going through there.
we have to also explore under the water. Ellie just loves playing in shafts of light. Perhaps she was a dolphin in a past life, or as one subscriber suggested, a mermaid.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. Looks like something that could be worth it. So we're here at the Anchorage and we're going to go through the arch. This is the arch here. This is the big attraction that everybody comes for.
If there's a cliff or a high mountain, David wants to climb it, so again with this arch he did give it a go, but because it was so vertical and unstable footing, he couldn't get very high. He gets 10 out of 10 for trying though.
So what do we got, guys?
I'm doing some
Fish. I sniped them with the spear gun. And Natasha made pasta that looks to die for.
Oh, looking good. What is it, honey?
70% sunshade. What's the point?
Says the skin doctor.
You're still in the sun. We need shade. It's too hot. Don't use 70% sunshade, use 100% shade.
You've heard it here, folks. Well, we'd like to thank you guys for joining us once again. We really like your company and hope you've enjoyed this episode. But join us next week as we travel further down south as we explore more gems just like Ponza. So like and subscribe. Oh, you know what to do. But kick off your shoes and come barefoot with us.
It's been a long time since you've been around. Remember when we used to make the streets unsafe together?
Take two. This is the real one.